It's been interesting looking at the way the environmental debate has developed. I mean, initially people thought carbon emissions, that's about the energy we use in our homes, or it's about the amount we drive or the amount we fly. But increasingly people have realised that food and the environment are so closely interconnected, and there's been a growing amount of research which is saying actually the way we eat and what we throw away is having a significant impact on the environment. Every step of the journey from the field to your plate is creating carbon. It could be anywhere as high as sort of 18% of greenhouse gas emissions is caused by the meat and dairy products we eat. Compare that, say, with the aviation sector, which is only 2%. So, you know, there's a tenfold difference between the aviation sector and the food sector.
We only have one planet, and it's a defined size. There's only a certain amount of arable land, and a lot of that's being increasingly degraded through animal agriculture. These, in Australia, certainly hard-hooved animals and many other parts of the world are degrading the quality of the land, and we need to be very careful with the way we farm in order to make sure that that land is there to sustain us for future generations. Cattle in many countries in the world outnumber the people. The cattle themselves produce a lot of waste, they require a lot of land. Methane is produced from them, which is a huge contributor to global warming, one of the most significant. And for every kilo of meat, an increasing proportion of dung goes onto the land. In the US, as the FAO report says, that's one of the primary causes of water table pollution. In the Amazon, the vast majority of deforestation is being used for cattle farming, and much of the remaining is for soya protein, which is used as cattle food. So without this relentless drive to produce more meat, which is a high profit product, we would have more Amazon, which has been called the lungs of the world. In addition to its contribution to climate change, you have to look at species loss. You have to look at the native people who live there and so on. The number of birds, the number of animals that live in a given area of forest are essentially wiped out by it being converted to forms of agriculture. It's like someone going into the Louvre in France and just smashing it up. I mean, it's mindless and it's just so unnecessary, and we're destroying something that can't be replaced. There are a host of things we could do that will have a really significant effect on climate change as a society. Things that we're looking at are things like transport, our energy supply, and then you have the way we use animals. Given that global livestock production is causing more greenhouse gas emissions than all forms of transport put together, I think we're confronted with a question: do we totally re-engineer our energy and transport systems, or do we just give up eating what I think are often unhealthy and cruel products? There's also the case of fish stocks. Most of the major ways in which fish are caught are fairly unsustainable. We have things like drift net fishing, which is completely indiscriminate and catches every sort of fish in the ocean. Then you have trawling, which trawls the ocean's floor, reducing plant biodiversity, destroying reefs. People often say that fish farming is a sustainable option, but actually an even greater number of fish are required to be caught from the wild in order to feed those fish. I have a number of friends who say, well, what if we raised animals in a more ethical manner? The Omnivore's Dilemma is a very famous book where that's his conclusion, is that he can move to the country and raise his own chickens and his own animals. It's a lovely concept if you like the taste of meat, but it's just not going to sustain 6 billion people and growing, which is the world's current population.